This is a story every developer knows too well. You open a ticket and it reads more like a riddle than a requirement. What does improve system performance or system feels slow even mean? Are we optimizing SQL queries, caching responses? Which part of the system is it at least? Half of the time usually is spent playing detective instead of writing a code. So in my company, we tried to fix it. Really, we did. We wrote task guidelines with some samples. We experimented with different user story templates. We even ran educational sessions for project managers. But the reality, people aren't stupid, they just lazy, and I get it. Writing tickets is boring. Nobody wants to do it. Think about how many Jira tickets need to be written every day. So no one wants to follow some strict template or fill out 10 fields. So it's just boring. So I feel them. I hate writing tasks too. But this leads to eternal conflict. PMs and IMs create low-level quality tasks. Developers complain, round and round we go. So in my company, instead of acting like a Judge Solomon, I decided to put AI in the middle. We built a workflow that is simple as a door, but powerful enough to completely eliminate this conflict. So from the one hand, PMs and IMs speak naturally. From the other hand, developers get structured tasks exactly how they want them. Sometimes the biggest wins comes from the simplest idea, so let me show you how. So we use Mattermost as our corporate messenger and Notion for sprint planning. Our PMs and IMs often talk with customers directly in the chat or just discussing what's going on regarding the client in some chat in Mattermost. So after the conversation, or even in the middle of the one, when there is a need to create a dev task, so they write a simple text using a keyword, which is auto ticket. They simply add the requirement like add custom fields for contract table, right? Then press enter. Then AI takes over and we got a response. The first thing that we see is questions that any developer would ask me as a task creator, like who needs this feature, right? What types of these fields there should be? Should users be able to edit, just add or remove or everything like that? And what's the priority of this task? So as you understand, this AI equipped with our guidelines for bug reports, for user stories, for technical tasks. So his goal is to identify the task type based on my entry and then ask me questions any developer would ask. But it's not all. Here, also, he gave me an example of a well-described user story based on my entry here. So it gives me summary, it gives me a goal, and it gives me the standard description for user story. Here is the acceptance criteria, etc. So me as a project manager can instantly copy that. It's almost done. I can change here something that I want. Obviously, AI has all the context of our project, so he suggests pretty good ideas, but as a human, I can check it and I can make any corrections, but let's assume I already satisfied with this. Just don't forget to put our phrase auto ticket, and I can press enter, and we got our reply. So this time is just a link to the Notion where I can see the ready task, because AI checked my text here, approved it, and decided that okay, it is perfectly corresponds to the guidelines. So we can see in the Notion it was created with the goal, user story, and acceptance criteria. That's it. So once again, how it works. AI analyzes the text, defines if it's a story or a bug or something else, ask the most important questions according to the guidelines that any developer would ask. Then it applies a proper template to it according to the guideline as a suggestion, and it reverts to the user with a recommendation how this task should be written. User just can copy paste with some small adjustments and submit it again, and then he will get a response with the task that was created in Notion. So that's it. I told you it's ridiculously easy, and this is one of those cases where the technology doesn't really matter. What matters is the impact, and the impact was we reduced the stress and we resolved this internal conflict between developers and PMs, and everyone is happy. And now let's break down how it works. Let me switch it off and let's go step by step. So first of all, we have some triggers, right? So the main difference here is what triggers the workflow, because if we use Mattermost, it doesn't have any default trigger in N8N, so we should use webhook. So let me execute the workflow again to show you on some real example. Seems like a legit ticket. Okay. So if you're using Mattermost, you have to configure this webhook. It should be an outgoing webhooks. So you can add a new outgoing webhook, and simply name it somehow, write a description, change the content type to application JSON. Do not connect it to some particular channel if you want it to be triggered based on activity in all your channels. And then that's the most important one. It's a trigger words. You can set different trigger words that will activate workflow. And then you should appoint these callbacks URLs. So please make sure you have test URL and production URL appointed in the Mattermost setting, because once you press active status, it's gonna be using production URL. After that, we check if this token is valid. Then we store key values like a username, like file IDs if user uploaded a file. Then a text, pay attention that we cleaned this text, so we removed a trigger word from this text to be the original, what's user actually mean, without our word auto ticket. Then the current date, the channel name. It's also important, for example, if this message was sent in client's name channel, we can already have client name and put it in the Notion field client to have a reference to particular client or something like that. Then channel ID and post ID, because if we want to respond to some particular message in Mattermost, we have to have this post ID in order to make response to it later. Then that's non-trivial part, because Notion is not like a regular system. It is organized in a funny way, because each page in Notion it has the same structure, where you have name of the page, URL of the page, and that's it in the response. So once you get page by URL, that's all you have. So in order to retrieve context from this page, you have to make additional HTTP request to Notion API with the ID of the page that from which you want to retrieve context, right? Then you have to use your token, and then you have to use some Notion version. Don't ask me what it is, I just Google it. That it just as per Notion documentation how to work with their API, they require you to appoint this Notion version. So the funny thing that now is 2025, so the latest one, I think it's this. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter much. So they're just the important parameters that you have to pass through in order to pass authorization. Okay, after that you will be given a list of different blocks, because in the Notion information is gathered in the blocks. This is one block, that's another block, that's another block, because each block can have different formatting. This can be image, this can be heading, this can be just a regular text. That's why it's like a different objects. This is just a big bunch of the code, you see, and each block of the code, it contains text that we are seeking, that we are looking for. So this text is the guideline that we store in the Notion, which describes what is the good description for the bug, what is the good description for the user story, etc. So once we got this page, we got its context, and then we want to concatenate this context and make it readable into one single text, right? So here is the Ukrainian language, so I'm sure you will not understand a thing, but this is the description how our CTO requires a task to be described. After that, we can feed our assistant with a project description. If you're developing something that changes too often, I recommend it to store this information separately in order to change it in one place, and then in all your workflows it's gonna be updated. So here we simply give some context about our project for LLM. After that, we gather all needed fields like project description, then user message, what was the initial message, and the guidelines for LLM. After that, we get simple assistant that receives all this information, project description, user message, guidelines, and it has role like he is a senior AI developer, right? His job is to help user write a proper task. On a step one, he receives all the input. On a step two, he's thinking what's the type of the issue of the user message. And then he should analyze how this text is aligned with the guidelines. So if it's not aligned, so we should ask user questions. And also we should give him an example how to describe it properly. Then we require it to make a strict output explaining what each of the fields we want, then giving him some sample of some abstract user story or a bug just to help him to fill all the fields properly in the case of successful scenario and in the case of unsuccessful scenario. Then we list all the tools that he is able to using, which is Mattermost and Think. That's it. In the Think tool, we have a standard description. Once you connect your Think tool to AI agent, it's gonna give you the same thing, so nothing to change here. We have here a strict output parser. This is what makes LLM respond every time with some particular and predictable JSON that you expect from it. And here what we need issue type, we need summary of the issue, we need priority, description, and whether it is accepted or not. Why? Because based on that, we will make some decisions in the workflow later. But before that, let me talk about Mattermost tool here as well. How to use it, we simply have to choose operation post, resource message, and channel ID we take from our saved values because we already know the channel ID, because we just want to make a response in the same channel. Then message we choose to be defined automatically by the model. That's what we need, because that's the model who decides what to ask the user. And here we should add an option. If you wanted to make a reply to our message, we have to provide a post ID to make a comment to our previous message. So after that, we gather all needed information like summary, description, issue type, output, etc. As you can see here, now it is declined. And so if it's declined, I simply do nothing, because all I need to do is to communicate with the user on this stage. So that's why here it's the dead end for our workflow. Two more nodes is a create task node. So it's basically a node that will create a task in the Notion, that will create a page in the Notion database. Now with some parameters, so we simply pass here a summary, priority, type, and description. That's it. And then if the task was created, we know its URL. So in this case, we simply respond to the user with the URL that Notion gave us on previous step. So it's that simple. So this is a great example on how a zero-brainer workflow can transform your internal processes. Automation is not only about impressing clients or just making tons of money. It's about helping your own people, your own company. The download link to the workflow is in the description to the video if you want. Thanks for watching.